Hello and welcome back to the ADHD Advocacy Project, and specifically my detailed coverage of the alleged shooter in the on-campus mass shooting at Florida State University here in 2025. That would be Phoenix Ikner. For the last videos, I started with a brief introduction that talked about how the media has pointed to a 10-year-old diagnosis of ADHD and some growth issues for Phoenix Ikner, and tried to infer that that is connected to the shooting. Then for the second video, I addressed whether ADHD or ADHD medications can prompt an incident like this. The third video was about some other drugs, principally Schedule IV medications and alcohol, that can lead to the kind of decisions that were made here, and these things were known to be abused by other mass shooters, and I pointed to some evidence for what was specifically going on for Ikner. For the fourth video, I began talking about the high school environment and his life before adulthood, along with Tallahassee itself, and the police organizations within Tallahassee, and the Leon County Sheriff office that Ikner was associated with, both through his stepmother and through his own involvement in the Leon County Sheriff's Office Youth Council. Now, what I wanted to do from there was to move to Ikner in college. However, since that time, I've had a few more things that I've found out that I wanted to address first. Specifically, to be prompt on response to grand jury findings here, but also to address what I now know regarding his application to be on the youth council. I do not know, I have not seen the youth council application he made myself. I am basing what I know upon the reporting of the Tallahassee News Channel, WCTV. WCTV has not released the application in full, but has described it in some coverage that is available online, which I will put links to in the notes below. One of the things that has come out from that is that a school resource officer there, in other words, a police officer that was stationed at the school, that school resource officer gave the recommendation for Ikner to be on that youth council. And in that recommendation, he or she stated that they had known Ikner for 3 years. And that was part of the recommendation. WCTV, from what I could tell, did not release the name of the school resource officer. Which is interesting, in part because that could have been anyone from Ikner's own stepmother to any other individual connected to Ikner's stepmother, or otherwise could be an interesting party from the sheriff's office. I'm not sure if it's the sheriff's office or Tallahassee Police Department that provides the school resource officer for Lincoln High School at this time. But I can also tell you that some individuals that are in Tallahassee Police Department at one time, later in the sheriff's office, and sometimes vice versa. And it's worth knowing, just because of Ikner's specific, both his ideas that he seems to hold and held before, and the pride that he has in his association with the sheriff's office, along with the fact that Ikner brought a weapon from the sheriff's office to use during his mass shooting. On top of that, from what has been said by WCTV, Ikner stated in his application that he wanted to help address some of the racial issues that existed at Lincoln High. Now, in one part, that confirms what I said from the previous video, that Lincoln High has had long existing racial conflict at it. If I remember correctly, Lincoln High was originally largely an African American school, and that's part of why it's called Lincoln High. A lot of the African American, or black, however you prefer to call it, this is a changing name all the time, but a lot of the black schools, or principally black schools, chose Lincoln for the name that they wanted, because of the obvious reasons that black students might prefer to have their school named after Lincoln. In the South, this is particularly true because I have lived in places where the middle school was named after the person who founded the Ku Klux Klan. There are places where, the high school or the middle school is named after General Lee, or any other number of people who fought for the Confederacy and the preservation of the state's rights to hold slaves. But generally, from what I have seen, and I will talk about that and talk about what I've seen both in the later videos and in, I believe I may have said some things in earlier videos. But generally, from what I've seen, either this indicates that there was a radical change for Ikner in wanting to, connect across races in a positive way, or he is essentially lying on his application to advance himself, or the application is being mischaracterized by WCTV. I don't have access to those. WCTV is the one that made the public documents request. There should still be, from my understanding, pretty liberal ability to get public documents in Florida. Florida has the Sunshine Law. But I am mainly going to focus upon the secondary source here because I don't really want to invest the money or time personally at the moment, but I can tell you that that's what we know about this application at this point. And these things are going to be important in regard to my complaints about what occurred with the grand jury. Now, the grand jury on May 14th submitted what is called a true bill presentment. And the true bill essentially gives you some idea of what deliberations happen in front of a grand jury and what decisions the grand jury made based upon that. And in this case, we rightfully don't know much about the grand jury itself. But what we do know is a number of the things that were presented to the grand jury and who did that. And what the grand jury came to as their decision was based on the people who gave them the evidence and what evidence they were allowed to see. And in this case, what you have is the state attorney, as authorized and required by law, is the person who advised the grand jury returning this indictment. And the state attorney in this case is Jack Campbell. And what he presented appears to include testimony from Leon County Sheriff Lieutenant Wiley Meggs regarding force training and protocols, and the criminal investigator Cameron Collins presented regarding the underlying murders and attempted murders and what he has investigated regarding those. And I am not sure, what all, Wiley Meggs, the sheriff's lieutenant, what he presented regarding, how much of what the person who was a Florida State University police officer who used deadly force to stop Ikner. I'm not sure how much Meggs is only reporting on, the justification of using deadly force in this instance. I think deadly force was totally justified. And I'm, somewhat surprised that Ikner survived with just one shot to his jaw in this case, when even more aggressive, more deadly force would have totally been justified. But it's possible also that, Meggs may have contributed more regarding protocols. And I say that in part because one of the issues here is that we have a gun that was on Ikner that, specifically was labeled as a Leon County Sheriff's Office gun. And had a sheriff's star on it. That was a Glock 21. And essentially the PR scrambling that appears to be occurring to downplay any connection between Ikner and the sheriff's office. And I'm not reaching here, and this will explain why. Meggs is the son of the last state attorney. He works for the sheriff's office. And Jack Campbell, who is the current state attorney, is the son of the former sheriff for the Leon County Sheriff's Office. So, if you're looking for people who, properly might need to recuse themselves in some way, or otherwise do something to make sure that this is investigated to the fullest, you have people that are this could be an investigation of them. This could be an investigation of Campbell's father. Jack Campbell, state attorney, his father was Larry Campbell, who was a sheriff for a very long time. And I'm not sure how far back Deputy Ikner, whose gun it was at the Leon County Sheriff's Office, but it's very possible that she was connected to the sheriff's office back when Jack Campbell's father was the sheriff for that office. And so you have, a very strong potential bias here. And now I'm going to read off some findings that were made for this true bill. In it says, officers have interviewed people who have made claims about his ideology in the media. In each case, they have admitted that they never observed behavior or comments that would cause them to anticipate this attack. Further, many have confessed that whatever his prior behavior, while rude or awkward, it never constituted a threat against any person or group. There's another section that says the victims were totally random. He shot men and women of various ages, races, and lifestyle. All evidence suggests that he merely wanted to kill as many people as possible, not that he was targeting any person or group. Now, if you are to look at who the victims are here, the two individuals who died are Tyru Chaba, and I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and Robert Morales. And they both appear to be Hispanic. Regardless of whether they are or not, I definitely can say that Ikner probably believed that they were Hispanic. Other than those 2 dead men, there were 5 injured women and 2 injured men. The names of those individuals has rightly not been disclosed, but one individual amongst those, Madison Askins, a survivor who was hospitalized, she gave an interview, so she has self-disclosed that she was one of the victims that is still alive. And if you are basing the randomness of the victims on that mixture, there's not really a strong reason to say that it was random. When you have, 2 Hispanic men that were working in food services in some fashion, as the 2 that were murdered, and a number of women as well. And, if you were to look at past campus shootings, one of the ones that's particularly well known is in the University of California at Santa Barbara. There was an incel motivated shooter that we have a detailed writings that he provided, a manifesto or however you want to call it, but that was Elliot Rodger. And we totally associate him with misogyny and being a incel-motivated shooter. But if you're looking at the people who actually died in this shooting, it was primarily men, primarily young men. So you can't really look to the victim's makeup and know for sure what the motivation was. And then, we have here that the abundance of evidence out there of people saying, of what they call as making claims about his ideology in the media. They just looked at apparently some of the people that they found statements from in the media, and then they got those witnesses to admit that they did not observe behavior or comments that would cause them to anticipate this attack. Now, that's a very vague statement in itself, first of all. And there's a strong possibility that, when a witness is told, hey, would you like to be involved in this trial, that they would back away from what they said. But I can tell you this. There is a YouTube page of videos that Ikner made. And one of them, he's talking about, in a video game, him enjoying a video game where he's targeting African terrorists. And one of the comments below it is a year old, talking about, how horrible a person he is and wondering if he would do a mass shooting of some kind. You have to think here, well, did the criminal investigator look at his media presence? That's my understanding of what his YouTube page is that page. But from what's stated on this grand jury document, there's no indication that they seized the computers from the house. There's no indication that they have seized the phone and reviewed it, including text messages. And as I have pointed out before, there is at least one text message chain online that has some interesting statements on it that I have mentioned in the previous video on benzodiazepines and Schedule 4 medications and how GABA medications can impact an individual. So generally, I'm not sure exactly what was here. That's for Jack Campbell to explain to the press if he wishes. So yeah, computers and phone and social media, all things that might indicate stuff about this ideology. I can't see any indication that they were reviewed at all. Instead, somehow they just came up with that people were mischaracterizing this individual as rude or awkward, when from what I've seen, there were people already talking about the possibility of shooting a year ago. There's no evidence on this grand jury document that they interviewed that school resource officer that I spoke about not that earlier in the video. That school resource officer who claimed at the time to have known him for 3 years. There's no evidence that they interviewed his biological parents about this, or his stepmother, Deputy Ikner. Maybe I, as a person who is just a lawyer and not generally a criminal lawyer, maybe I don't see quite what's happening here for some reason. But it sure looks suspicious to me that you have the person who is utmost connected to the sheriff's office, Jack Campbell, not seeming to have any interest in pursuing all matters. And the reason that's important is that we all know that for sure Ikner is going to be pursued as a murderer for these murders and for these attempted murders. However, if you've been paying attention lately, there are a lot of individuals that it's not just murder that we pursue. We also pursue them as a terrorist, and we look at the people that are connected to them. The Buffalo shooter who attacked a supermarket, he was found guilty as a terrorist. And Ikner, from his social media, has said years ago that he watched the video of the Buffalo shooter shooting people. Ikner, everything about him indicates that this is what I can tell from how I see him, from what I can tell, is that he was a Christian nationalist, racist, far-right individual. And I'm saying that not just from what other people have said about him, but what Ikner has said himself, along with the clothing that Ikner wears. And, there needs to be more to contradict these things than whatever interview an officer did regarding somebody who was connected to the very place they are working. So while I started this trying mainly to focus on how ADHD does not make somebody a school shooter, instead what we have is what does make somebody a school shooter: a far-right religious extremism and racist view, along with a misogynistic history. These are all things that you should practically expect somebody like that to either be A, a school shooter, or B, a police officer, because police officers have one of the highest rates of spousal abuse and are known for having deep problems with racism within their organization. So, but on top of that, not only is Jack Campbell associated with the Leon County Sheriff's Office incredibly deeply, he has a history himself of the place that the Second Judicial Circuit State Attorney's Office, helmed by State Attorney Jack Campbell, was reported to have a paper printed in the office telling employees to pursue harsher penalties for certain violations if they are Hispanic. The attorney Jack Campbell admitted that there was a paper in their office that said that they should pursue harsher penalties for Hispanics. Now, Campbell had a justification that he claims would justify that. However, I sure wouldn't want, if I was somebody who was the family member of a Hispanic man, this is not the person that I would want to prosecute the individual who shot them and killed them. I will also say that on Campbell's webpage, he likes to point out that in the aftermath of the Parkland High School tragedy, he was selected to be on panels to address school violence statewide. And what happens? We actually have school violence occurring right under his nose. I am curious what his recommendations were on the statewide level and why he was chosen for that, knowing these things that he was involved with. There are deep governmental problems here. So generally, I hope with this video, I have helped add some context for people that aren't getting news coverage from their either national news or their local news that is truly covering what is occurring here. I'm grateful for what WCTV and the Tallahassee Democrat have done, because that has given me much of the information that I've been able to analyze here. However, this is kind of an example of why your local news will not report on what really is happening in a story to you. Because WCTV, they got an interview with Campbell talking about this, and about how how much the cops who shot Ikner were heroes. And I do agree. They are heroes. That's what we need police officers for, is to shoot people like Ikner in the face. However, there is no willingness to go further and see, what actually really happened in this case, because then you might not be able to get the kind of useful information you need from the sheriff's office as easily. The same thing is true for the Tallahassee Democrat regarding the various political people that seem to be connected to this, and their ability to get information from them easily. Unfortunately, for somebody to talk like this, they have to be outside of Tallahassee and outside of Florida to some degree at this point. You have to understand, if you are somebody who is not as familiar with Tallahassee, part of the thing is about Tallahassee is every job there is either a first degree connection or second degree connection to the government. Tallahassee is the capital of the state, and other than the government offices associated with the capital, much of the business is associated with either Florida State University or one of the other educational institutions there. All of that connected to the state, connected to government, and then you have the local government elements like this. And with that, you can't criticize it, because if I was a attorney in Tallahassee still, I would worry that, I would worry about what happens with criticizing the local police officers or the local state attorney, and, whether there would be any value in that. So, if you found what I said to be interesting or of value, please subscribe, watch some of the other videos if you find their topic interesting, and most importantly, spread this information, because apparently nobody else is willing to talk about why we're not looking at these matters, why we're not seriously looking at how to prevent this from occurring over and over and over again, nor are we looking at the people who not only could have possibly stopped it, but may actually be the people who inspired this action in the first place. Thank you very much, and I will see you in the next video.